everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we're here for a big one, so strap in. Because we are here for two stories, as we've been doing with this set. We have this Kaldheim side story number 4, Direction, Purpose, Honor, Glory, by Miguel Lopez.
What a cool title.
It is very cool. It is very good. And it works really well with that story, so very nicely done. As well as story number 5, the main story, number 5, and the finale, The Battle for Kaldheim, by Roy Graham, with contributions by Jenna Helland. My quick reviews at the top are, the side story is very good, but it's very long, so you need to have the time for it, but it's worth your time. Let's do it one at a time. What did you think?
I feel the same way about that one. Yeah. I don't know. I felt like the beginning was a little slow. It took a little while to get to a point where I really started getting into it.
I hesitated to try to think of how to have shortened it because it was a very long story.
I didn't attempt that.
Well, I did and I didn't. You know what I mean? I don't feel qualified to. I'm trying to think if we're giving critiques of it was long, I'm trying to think of could I give any critique in terms of what didn't need to be there, but
right.
I'm not the author, so I really couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that one, if you have the time, is worth your time. Just be aware, as Amy said, it may take a little bit to get into it, so,
yeah, but like you said, that information is not stuff you can just leave out. It's just stuff that's not as scintillating as the rest of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. So it's
important. It's
right.
just not, as fun as the rest of the story was.
And we'll get into that when we for the full review, but also for the main story, for number 5, for the finale. That is a must read. It was very, very good.
A lot going on.
Yeah, and we'll get more in depth into that. But our quick review is, if you haven't read it, go read it. Because we, as we remember, or try to remind people here we review, we do not summarize. And so we want you to be able to experience the full heft of these stories without us ruining it for you.
Right.
And we want you to be able to get in on the conversation. Give us your opinions. Do you agree with things that we're saying? Disagree, etc. Whatever you're feeling, we want to know about it in the comments down below.
Yeah. Open discussion. Yeah,
exactly. So, like I said, please feel free to leave those thoughts down below as we go through. Okay. But if you are interested in reading these stories, check the description down below. The first 2 links will be to these 2 stories. So we encourage you to go read those. And then, of course, we would love it if you would come back here and join in the discussion. Okay. So, that being said, on to the full reviews themselves. We will go in the order in which they were released, calendar-wise. So we will start with side story number 4, Direction, Purpose, Honor, Glory, once again by Miguel Lopez. This was following one person. It was Raynar, who...
Well, hold on a second.
Sure, sorry.
Miguel Lopez, was that somebody who wrote...
No.
Any of the other stories that we've read?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, but... because if you recall... Stories 1 and 2, I have it written down so I don't have to just say, this person. I can actually say their real name.
A person that was nameless.
Okay.
Sorry about it.
Setsu Uzume. Right. Setsu Uzume wrote side stories 1 and 2. Then we had side story number 3 last week, was written by Roy Graham with contributions from Jenna Helland, as the main stories have all been written.
Right.
And so this week we have Miguel Lopez, and we are unclear / I am unclear. I believe there is another side story next week, as there was with Zendikar Rising, that it was 5 and 5. If that's the case, then we'll be back next week with JaAR, by the way, with 1 story, not 2. And if not, we'll still
have to wait and see if that is in fact what happens.
Right. So. Well, it comes out on Friday, if it's coming out at all. So feel free to look for that for yourselves. But if it's not, we'll still be back next week for JaAR, because we will continue when we are done, whenever we are done with Kaldheim stories. We will continue with our Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch reviews, which we've been doing. So we encourage you to stay tuned for that. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell.
Please.
You'll get notifications whenever any of our videos come out. We stream on Arena on Monday nights and stream video games on Friday nights. Anyway, but yeah, we would love if you would stick around.
Yes, please.
So, yes, so this story is about Raynar, who is in Istfell. First time we've heard of Istfell, really, which is nice in these stories. It is the opposite of Starnheim. It's just where you go when you had...
It's the hell.
It's not really hell, I didn't think. It seemed more like purgatory.
There's a lot of, like, tar and shit.
I guess.
In the description.
It seemed, well, yeah, and because Egon's there, so I guess. It seemed to me more like purgatory-esque than hell-esque, where you're not really being punished the whole time, there's just not much going on.
Right.
You know?
You're not, like, burning alive, but...
Right. Although, maybe the torture is all the false hope. Who the hell knows? You know, where you're like, well, I could keep doing things here to get to Starnheim. No. No, you can't.
Nah, dude.
Stop trying. So... I get that.
You know, if it makes you feel like your life or lack of life has meaning.
I will say, I don't know that this is a negative necessarily, because I think this was the goal. But this story was very odd in terms of progression of time. And I get that from the perspective of you're dead. So you have your afterlife is not limited by the trappings of old age being a thing that you have to look forward to and or dread, however you feel like talking about it. But that if you're undead, or dead, I should say, and in the afterlife, there is no end time. So time, as we've learned from a lot of characters who are immortal or live for many, 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 many years, that time starts getting weird for them to begin with. And so for this story to feel odd in terms of time, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's a negative. I think it makes sense that reading through this, you're like, wait, how much time has passed since that last paragraph? Like,
it's perfectly, it feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. And even with the concept of, there was one paragraph that started like centuries past, and then this happens. And you're like, holy crap, that came out of nowhere. Yeah. Because before that, I was reading some things and I'm thinking to myself, wow, like, it seems like a lot has happened to Raynar since the beginning of the story, which was like 2 paragraphs ago. So, like, what's happening? But I think it's because they were trying to just progress through a lot of stuff all at once. And that makes sense, especially for, again, how long this story was, which I would, well, I guess I can ask you, do you have thoughts? Was the length of this story a negative, a positive, or somewhere in between?
It was a negative. But like you said, I can't sit here and pick out parts that it would have made sense to keep in and parts that it would have made sense to take out.
Yeah.
And it's not really 2 stories that they could have divided.
No,
either.
I agree.
It's one story.
Yeah.
I think at least in terms of what we read the stories for to film JaAR, it makes it difficult, especially since we have to do 2 stories in an episode. We're reading 2 long-ass stories, and how much of the information are we not really taking in just because it's so long?
Well, that one's
like, how much of a sponge is my brain being if I have to listen to that much information? That's
clearly on us, right? We have chosen to read these stories this way, not wizards, not Miguel, right? So, so I'll ask the rest of you who did not do it that way, presumably. What did you think of the length of the story? Was it a bad thing? Was it a good thing? Was it nothing to you? Did you not even notice? You just sat down and enjoyed a good story? Because there's a lot to talk. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and be like, it was long, we didn't like it, moving on. Like, there's a lot still to talk about with this story. And I did enjoy it.
And maybe other people, compared to me, prefer a more long form story. Maybe you're the type of person who, like, power reads novels every day, and I'm just the type of person who likes every once in a while reading a short story and then I'm done reading.
Well, and don't forget,
so,
don't forget, because we dealt with this with Zendikar Rising too. Next week, let's assume there is a side story next week, because I think there will be, but whether there is or isn't. And by next week, I mean literally a day after this video comes out on Friday. But let's assume that there's a side story on Friday. That's it for Kaldheim. We're done. No more stories after that.
Yeah.
And if there isn't one on Friday, no more stories after right now. That's it. Either way, that's multiple weeks until the next stories will even be discussed, let alone begun to be released. So one long story in there, combined with one short story, the Saga of Tybalt, right? Those should do well to tide us over to the next one.
Yeah.
We do these things because, you know, there are many different reasons, and I truly I have no interest in getting into that because I want to actually review these stories because they're very good, and this episode doesn't need to be any longer. Hence, what we were talking about with the actual story, right?
Yeah.
What can we possibly cut out? How about talking about how this is bad for us? Irrelevant. So let's talk about the actual story. But I would love to hear people's opinions down in the comments.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I like that there was an Istfell story because a lot of the stories focused on Starnheim. Whether they were the side stories, the main stories, whatever, like Starnheim is talked about. And that's because that's the goal, right? I mean, everybody's goal is to go to Starnheim. Nobody's sitting there going, well, I mean, hell's a thing, but, you know, what about Starnheim? But let's learn about hell, too. Because Starnheim is the goal. But if Istfell exists, I like knowing that it exists and hearing a story from that world or from that realm. It's important. It exists. It was created. It was like world built, right?
Right.
So tell me about it. Give me a story on it. So this makes sense that it may be the only one, and I'm totally okay with that, because it tells you about Raynar of Istfell. So you get to hear about the guardian of Istfell. And so it was a really good story for that realm to be shared. You get to hear about a god in the process. You get to hear about Starnheim and see Starnheim. And you get to see two like named on-card characters in Fyria and Egon, right? Those are the main two. And we'll talk about Bjorn in a minute, but yeah. Then we have a lot of, as Amy pointed out, towards the beginning of the story, a lot of description of the world of Istfell, or the realm of Istfell, the things that Raynar sees and what he thinks about that in terms of spirits walking like a river, and there's like some demons there kind of judging them or like attacking them or something, and Raynar gets to kill those demons, and then, or before that, he sees cairns to Egon that one of the spirits or undead built, or dead built, being torn down by the others who felt slighted that this one person felt like they were more worthy of appeasing the gods and getting a reward than the rest of them were. I mean, that's, you know, mentally that's a real thing for some people, right? And then we get into the meat and potatoes of it, where Raynar finally meets Bjorn, who is a young boy who was killed and is here in this realm and has a task. And that task is to kill the Elk King, the Crow King, and the Bear King, take their crowns or their helmets or both, and go to try to get to Starnheim. Go up the tower that was built by Bjorn's family, according to Bjorn, right? That was actually
through the ages.
That was so cool to me. What an interesting concept.
I love it.
That especially once they get there, because at first you hear like, you know, my great grandfather built the first layer, and then his son built the next, and the next, and the next by the next son, and the next son, etc. Right. And now it's my turn, and it's close to Starnheim, so I'm just going to use it to get to Starnheim. Really awesome. But what I even preferred, or what I liked more than that, was when we actually got there. Because hearing about it sounds kind of cool, interesting concept. But then when you get there, the fact that as they progress upward, right, the rooms or the floors get more and more advanced structure building wise as you progress vertically. Makes perfect sense, but it's so cool to hear about, and especially I liked the little touch of Raynar talking about like, oh wow, old crappy stone or wood or whatever on the bottom, and then the next layer is this building material that I'm familiar with, and then this building material that I'm familiar with, and then this building material that I'm not familiar with, and then this building material that like was taken from Istfell, and then stuff that he was completely unaware of. Why? Because he's been dead for centuries.
Right.
So all
the centuries of time that have passed while he was dead.
Yep.
This tower has been built out of new building materials.
Amazing.
It's so cool. I mean, it's right up my alley.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I just, and I get that because you're definitely much more into that stuff than I am. I just loved the idea of like, coming to that realization of him being like, I don't even know what this stuff is. And I'm like, oh, futuristic. And I'm like, oh, no, not futuristic.
Right.
Present day, he's just been dead for centuries.
To him.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
Really, really awesome. And again, that also makes you think, does that mean that this story progressed further than the Kaldheim that we saw in the main stories?
Oh, yeah.
It's the afterlife. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
It could be. It could be centuries past when Kaya was there, right? All those planeswalkers that we know could be dead by the time this story's over. There's no way to know.
And that's a good way of looking at it, too, because, like you said, time is so messed up there. But it's not that time is messed up there. It's that time is meaningless there.
Right.
Because time is only meaningful to those of us who created the construct of time.
Right.
To those of us who decided that keeping track of that was important.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you're dead, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Time really only exists for those of us who choose to have it exist.
Right.
Because it's, time is much more sort of cyclical than linear,
Sure.
if you want to believe that.
Right. Then I wanted to talk a bit about Bjorn, because as we learned in the story, Bjorn was Egon the whole time. Egon, the god of death, the ruler of the realm, I guess you could call him. Or, like, at least that's where he lived, had manipulated Raynar into coming with him to try to kill all these kings. And kind of, Bjorn had insisted that he be the one to deal the killing blow, and in traveling was, like, giving Raynar life, right? Like, his hands were becoming human again or living again, and he was getting further and further along under the promise that when they got to the last king and killed him, that Raynar would be granted access to Starnheim just like Bjorn was. We then find out that it was Egon, and Firia comes down, and they're arguing with Firia, they being Egon mostly. Raynar didn't really feel that he needed to argue with the Valkyrie. But I also actually really appreciated it. I didn't fully understand just looking at the card, but they talked about it in the story, that Firia has white and black wings. She's a white-black card, so it makes perfect sense, but the fact that she is a representative of a Valkyrie and a Reaper, really awesome. I appreciated that a lot, and it was something that even having seen and played with the card, I was not aware of. Right, so really, really awesome there. I appreciate that the story mentioned that, and that I was able to pick up on that and key into that, because that was really cool. But I was very confused with the Bjorn stuff for a couple of reasons. This is not a negative necessarily, but I wanted to talk about it. So Egon is pretending to be Bjorn. Does that mean there was a Bjorn? I have no idea. But when Bjorn mentions about his ancestors building this tower, right? And then by the time they're going to the tower, they find out that the Bear King, Raynar, finds out that the Bear King is at the top of this tower. So Raynar says, does that mean that the Bear King is your father? Are you going here to kill your family? Like, that this is your ancestors, you're their kin? Were you kin to these other kings as well? Like, what are you trying to do?
Right.
And kind of alludes to Bjorn to say, did you kill yourself to get here? And Bjorn says, I shirk my destiny or whatever. Right? I make my own destiny. Which is very Nico Aris of him, to be fair. But so weird. And then the fact that Bjorn, sound familiar to anybody else? Because Bjorn is the name of the blue spectral bear on Arena.
With the horns.
Correct. Is that just...
horns.
Right. Now, is that just so elk horns, sure. Now, is that because it was a stereotypical Norse name, and so you just used it twice because the Arena team doesn't talk to the story team? Or was it on purpose? But if it was on purpose, how did Egon know? But, why is it a young boy or a young man and not a bear? Is it that Bjorn on Arena is the representation of Bjorn, the young man? So it's like a bear.
Well, is it a god?
Bjorn? I doubt it highly. I mean, Egon is a god, but Bjorn's not, and the kings are not, or at least don't seem to be.
Because I was going to say, if it's a god, it can kind of take whatever manifestation it wants to.
Sure. Yeah, it just didn't make any sense to me. I was a little confused by that. I don't know. If you have thoughts, let me know in the comments.
The bear and the, like you said, the different animals.
Bear, crow, and elk.
Right. Are those animal representations of the thrones? So the kings are associated with those particular animals?
I don't know. Well, I don't know enough about the kings. What Bjorn said was, what Egon as Bjorn said was that his family killed or read the entrails of or whatever an elk, a crow, and a bear to determine his destiny. So he then chooses to go to the afterlife to kill the elk, then the crow, and then the bear kings to shirk that destiny and get to Starnheim. Okay, does that mean that those kings... I don't know. I don't know anything about the kings. I just know that they were representations... Yeah. I just know that they were representations for...
Bear King Patronus.
Yeah. But they were representations for... Egon of something.
Yeah.
And at the end, Raynar mentions that he's done this many times before. That Egon's done this many times before, but have I? And Furia says, yes, you have. And, you're going to go back and I'm going to put you back right back where I found you. And you're probably going to do it all over again, but just stay here, keep being the Guardian, whatever.
Right.
But does that mean that...
Congrats, you did it.
But does that mean that there's kings of all different kinds of animals and he just picks 3 different animals each time? Does it do the kings just get replanted back in those places and then re-killed again?
I assumed it was a completely different scenario every time. With the same result.
Sure.
But that the fakeness of the scenario changed from time to time.
Right, because I was going to say, or is it all fake for Raynar? But that doesn't make sense because Egon is trying to complete this quest to be worthy of going to Starnheim. So clearly faking it for Raynar doesn't make sense. It's not about Raynar. It's just that Raynar is someone to be there who is strong to lead him to that eventual goal so that Egon doesn't have to just kill everything on his own. He can get Raynar to help him.
Well, I think the point was everybody who comes into this hell or purgatory or whatever thinks that they don't deserve to be here. So almost everybody tries to fight being here.
Sure.
So he is the person who makes sure that they stop doing that.
Well, and Egon...
And so this time it was Egon.
Sure.
And last time it was Bob, and next time it's Joe.
Well, even Raynar, right, gets to a point where he's like, okay, I guess I do belong here, this is where I belong and this is what's going to happen. And he starts walking towards the river and the spirits and souls or whatever in the river are like, no, it's not your time. Well, you saved us, we're free, but get the hell out of here. So even the other souls are aware that he is the guardian of Istfell and needs to not give of himself to this never-ending river of souls who are just like, whatever, we're fine now, we just want to go on our way, leave us alone. Like, okay. It was a little odd. I was a little confused. So I don't think that makes it a bad story. I don't think it's a bad thing, but a little bit more context would be helpful. And again, maybe this is a situation where the Planeswalker's Guide to Kaldheim will help, and that's something that we can look into as well, because I mentioned that was something that we wanted to do. So we'll figure that out over the next few weeks. But JaAR, no matter what, as I said, we'll be back next week. So tune in for that. Two last things. Serulf was in this story.
Yes.
Why?
For the sake of a name drop.
But was it? Because there was a point where Serulf, like the last time we see Serulf has been looking in on Egon and Raynar, or Bjorn and Raynar, for a while. Like, Raynar sees Serulf in the beginning of his time there, and notices that it's him and is like, I'm gonna go fight him, and walks close until Serulf breathes air on him, and he's like, okay, nope, you're right, sorry, my bad, I'll go this way, thanks. And he leaves, and then Serulf leaves. But then, unbeknownst to Raynar and Egon/Bjorn, Serulf is watching them. 2 more times it's mentioned. And the third time that it's mentioned, the final time, is when it mentions that Serulf sees them, goes and reports to other parties of what Serulf has witnessed. Was that other party Furia? Because if it wasn't, who was it, and why was it? Because there's no other purpose to Serulf being in this story. And even with Serulf being in this story, was there a reason? Like, I just bought the fact that when they got to the top of the tower, killed the third king, and Egon/Bjorn is standing there yelling into Starnheim, that close to Starnheim, that somebody probably is going to hear you. It's like you're knocking on the door and yelling. You didn't need to give somebody advance notice that you were showing up. So I don't understand what the purpose of Serulf in this story was. Like Amy said, I hesitated to immediately go to it must be a name drop, like a shameless name drop, but that's kind of what it seems like. But again, as with anything, I'm open to being told otherwise in the comments.
Well, maybe it's just like a quick little hint as to the Norse story that Serulf is associated with.
Maybe, and that's
so as opposed to like actually telling that story, they're like, well, Serulf, shows up and, does this even basically just so that they can have that in there. That little like tidbit of what the Norse mythology story that's associated with what that character is representing.
It's Fenrir, by the way. Fenrir is the name of the massive realm-eating wolf. I'm not familiar enough with Fenrir to know the answer to that, but again, if you are, let us know. The last thing I wanted to talk about with that story, and then we'll move on to the finale story, was something that we talked about either last week or at least 2 weeks ago, but in weeks past. 0 pictures with this story. 0. Whereas you had talked about with last week's story with Arnie Brokenbrow, you mentioned that there were the 2 pictures, right? Of Arnie slays the troll and Arnie Brokenbrow himself, and you even said, is it worth it to do a story that could only have 2 pictures associated with it? Now this story, 0 pictures, although there's no reason for there to have been 0 pictures. You had Egon, a card in the set. Furia, a card in the set. Serulf, a card in the set. There's even art for this story that was like the thumbnail in the article page, or on the article page, and which is the thumbnail on our video as well. So if you missed it, go look at our thumbnail. It's it's the green-hued spirit with the armor on it, right? So I think that's a spirit token art, but I don't remember off the top of my head, but I believe that's true. So you could have had that as well, representing, that's clearly supposed to represent Raynar. If that's not specifically Raynar, and so maybe you didn't want to put that in, okay, I get it. But you have named characters. You have Serulf, you have why not have the gates of Istfell, right? You talked about Istfell, you talked about the gates of Istfell. Where was that picture?
Right.
It seemed odd that those pictures were not included, and I didn't fully understand why they weren't, because in my eyes there was no reason for them not to be, unless you feared, right? Because pictures take up
A lot of
retail space, right? And this story was very long. And we noticed that it was long before we even started reading it because of just the length of, click and drag down the scroll bar.
Right.
That's how long the story is. So
The scroll bar just gives out before you're done.
maybe they did it for mobile purposes. Like that their website on mobile or that
like
article on mobile would be forever.
There's a limit on
I have no
the
idea.
space. Okay, maybe.
I have no idea. It's
Or
their
it might
own.
have just been.
It's their own website, so there shouldn't be a limit on anything. Like that's just not
Right.
how it works, unless you paid a very poor hosting platform to make your website, which I doubt.
Not go there.
No, I would doubt it, but
But they might have just seen how freaking long it was and said, "We're not going to put a bunch of pictures in here. We're going to spare people a little bit
I guess.
with the scrolling." And
I don't know. I would love to know people's thoughts on that, because there definitely could have been pictures in this one, more pictures than the last side story, Army Broken Brow, just in terms of like easy ones, right? You could have stretched for others, but easy ones would have been Egon, Firia, Serulf, and then like the gates of Istfell, or like other Istfell-ish lands that if you wanted to put those in there, like that's super easy answers. So I don't know. I don't know what the motivation could have been to not, but it was obvious in its lacking of having those in there, and it was very long as well. So the other thing is, like, psychologically breaking it up with pictures every once in a while might have been nice.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's not just a wall of text.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't take away from the story, but it's something that I thought about, so maybe arguably it did take away from the story, just because my head was like, oh, there could have been a picture for Egon. I didn't realize Egon, because like Egon was a surprise, right? So that was the thing where it's like, oh crap, it was Egon the whole time. That's cool. Wait, why isn't there a picture of him? There could have been a picture of Egon. Could have been a picture of Firia. Whatever. I don't want to go on that forever. But yes, that's something that I thought of in terms of the lack of pictures and the fact that there easily could have been a few.
Yeah, I will say, because for us, because we're doing 2 stories in an episode, it actually was kind of helpful that there were no stories in the first, or were no pictures in the first story, just because like I was getting things done. And I usually am doing something while Joe reads, but having pictures is really nice, which is why, last week I sat here and said, yeah, if there's only 2 pictures, what's the point?
Yeah.
But, yeah, like you said, there were plenty of opportunities for them to put pictures in this one, they just didn't. And it's gotta be the length, because I don't know what else it would be.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Unless, again, the pessimist in me would say that it has to do with, like, that it like being done at the last minute, or them not having proper access to those pictures or something. Like something in terms of someone dropping the ball, as opposed to, but that's the pessimist in me. The one who wants to be a lot more hopeful about the direction that these stories are going feels like I agree with you on that it's got to be a length thing that they consciously chose to do it that way.
Right. They were like, let's spare them all of the scrolling.
And that's what I'm going to think.
That's what
I'm going to keep thinking, to be fair. And so on to the finale story. Last week we had mentioned with story number 4 that when it ended that I was a little worried. I don't remember if you agreed or not, but I was a little worried that we had to deal with the closing of the Doomscar, the stopping of Varagoth, and Kaya meeting up with and stopping Vorinclex. And so let's talk about that, because there are things to talk about.
Yes.
First of all, this type of story is absolutely my bag. 100%. I love these kinds of stories. I love when you have story progression with multiple characters being introduced here, there, and everywhere, and then the final story appropriately mashes them all together and has them in a big fight. This story had Varragoth, Cosima, Finn, Kaya, Tyvar, Inga, Sigrid, Arnie, Alrund. I forget the name. I didn't write the name of the crow or the raven, but whatever Alrund's raven's name is. You had Halvar, god of battle. You had Varragoth. Did I say that already? I think I said Varragoth. Right?
You had everybody.
You had Koma, the Cosmos Serpent. You had all the Valkyries. You had Nico show up as well. You had every person from the side stories leading up to this and this.
Yeah.
Except for this most recent side story that we just reviewed, but that's because, they're a little busy on this film. So I get it. But otherwise, every other named person, I feel like the Valkyries' names weren't mentioned from Nico's story, but they were almost certainly there. So everyone that we had met up to this point, good, bad, or otherwise, showed up and then some. Because Cosima hadn't technically shown up previously. Her Omen Keel had, and that was even mentioned. So that is the kind of stuff that I love. I eat it up if it's done well.
Yeah.
And I think here
Avengers Assemble.
Yeah. But I truly think it was done well here.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but I thought of that.
There was potential.
I thought of that, though. I thought of the fight from War of the Spark. Where it's like, we see that guy over there. His name is whatever. He did this. Also, I heard her name was Arlen Cord. She's fighting people, too. It's
really dumb.
Garbage. Some people may think, and I will disagree, but I would love to hear from you. Some people may think the moments of, this is it, everything's terrible, we're going to lose, oh look, here comes the thing that will save us. That may have happened a few too many times.
Yeah.
I don't agree. I think it was great because you always are like, who's gonna be? And then it's there and you're like, yeah, it's Nico, it's the Valkyries, whatever it is, right? It just feels so good. That moment when the elves show up, right? When Harald and Tyvar and the elves show up, it was all very Return of the King. When the spirit army shows up or the ghost army shows up and like they're getting charged at, and then the ghost army just comes out of nowhere like a wave and just crashes over them from the side. Like, that kind of thing. That's exactly what I thought of with the elves, right? That's what it made me think of. The other thing is, talking about kind of pop culture allegories, I also thought of Thor. I thought of Thor from Avengers Infinity War, where all the heroes are fighting to delay the Thanos' army getting to Vision.
Right.
And that they are just getting destroyed, right? Like, the Hulkbuster's getting torn into, Captain America's down on the ground, Black Panther's getting mobbed, and then Thor, they're waiting at that point, they don't know it yet, but they're waiting for Thor to get Stormbringer, the axe. Because when he gets it, he shows up, starts throwing the axe everywhere, breaking them all to pieces, and then they start winning again, and or they just kill them all right then and there, right? But that is what I thought of with Halvar and the Sword of the Realms. Even though Toralf is the Thor in this set, I get it. He's got the hammer, it throws, it comes back, I get it. But it still was very Thor in Infinity War, where he gets the sword, he needs a little bit of time to travel to the area, aka sit down with the sword and think about it long enough to be able to then thrust it into the air and close all these doom scars. Yeah. Yeah, with Rocket and Groot, right? But that's exactly what I thought of. And again, so all those things are going through my head, but all of that translates to, it was just great. It was super well done. And I really enjoyed that. I was like...
Yeah, I just thought of what you wanted more.
Yeah. I have a whole theory on that. I'm not going to talk about it in this episode, but I think that was very dumb of Wong to have said. If you have questions on that, leave it in the comments. Maybe I'll make a video in the future. But I think that made no sense for Wong to say, because I think Doctor Strange had very specific reasons. But yes, so I don't know. This this story was great. I really enjoyed it. Well, I guess I'll ask you, because I didn't hear your response to this.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on mashing everybody together in a big ball and throwing them into a battle, and like how it was done here, and like you said, versus like War of the Spark?
Again, there's the what you wanted more, and every single time somebody comes through the little, glowy hole. Whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about.
It's the sling ring teleportation hole, yes.
It's a glory hole.
Okay.
No.
Because they come through the hole and receive their glory.
I said a glowy hole because it glows.
Yeah, but then you said glory hole.
Yes,
so.
on purpose.
I know.
But anyway, glory holes aside, what were we talking about?
Wow.
I mean, every time somebody comes through one of the sling rings, you're still like, yes, each time,
Well, and especially because
it's a tiny yes, because it keeps on happening.
Yeah, but it's
a lot of them.
Right, but it's a different person every time, and it's a person like who knows which one of these characters you most identified with in the prior stories.
Right.
And or like with Cosima, that you just liked playing with her card, or you enjoy seeing her art, or whatever. Like all of those things combined together. Like when Arnie showed up, I was like, hell yeah. I liked Arnie's story, and I'm glad that because it would have been fine if that was the end of Arnie's stories in Kaldheim for now. It would have been totally fine. The fact that they had him show up again, and not only show up again, but have that moment of like, I got this, you guys go. And they're like, what do you mean you've got this? And then they're like, all right, well, I mean, he seems like he knows what he's doing. That's awesome. That's so good. So I don't know, that made perfect sense for the character of Arnie, right?
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense for characterization. The reason why you care to see each one of those individual people in Avengers show up is not necessarily because you identify with a tertiary character. Maybe you identify with frickin' Iron Man, but you want to see those tertiary characters because of the character building that you've had already.
Mm-hmm.
The characterization, you care about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And in this story, there were people who you gave a damn about, and in that story it was difficult because there were so many, and it wasn't the kind of thing where you saw these people come into this battle and you were able to say, okay, this is what this guy's good at, and this is what this person's good at, and oh, this person's here, great, because this thing over here is happening, and they really need that person there, and I feel like this story kind of gives you a little bit more of that than a story like that really did.
Mm-hmm.
Where they just kind of were like, oh, well, everybody's doing the same thing.
Right.
So people's individual strengths aren't being highlighted. It's just, you show up, you fight, you maybe survive, and you leave.
I also, it was interesting to me, right? Because I looked at a lot of those moments because I thought about how much I enjoyed all the different, then it's the elves, and they're actually helping because Tyvar went there, and it's the Valkyries, and they've got Nico with them, and that's really cool as well. But it made me think, was Nico needed in this fight? Probably not. No. Nico was able to take out a couple of trolls that were bothering Kaya, so maybe they needed that, maybe Kaya needed that moment of reprieve to be able to then fight Varaggoth when Varaggoth came and kill Varaggoth with Tyvar's help.
Okay.
So maybe, but at the same time, Nico didn't do a lot, but Nico didn't need to do a lot.
Right.
Because Nico showed up flying with a bunch of angels.
Right, exactly.
That in and of itself is enough of a spectacle.
Boss.
Yeah. It's enough of a spectacle to be like, hell yeah, okay. And then you get to the moment later where now that Nico and Kaya have been introduced, you can have that moment of Kaya being like, oh, another protege. Okay, sure, we're doing this now. But yeah, all of those moments, one right after the other, I still enjoyed them a lot. I think that again, Roy Graham and Jenna Helen did an amazing job of putting this battle story together.
Right.
Was really, really well done. I also thought, I guess I have questions for people, because Amy and I were talking about this, and I agree with you that not all of the gods need to have comparable allegories in Norse mythology and or in Thor mythology or Marvel mythology, but it still very much seemed like Halvar was Heimdall here, with the sword of the realms, right, being the sword that Heimdall has to open the gate, the Bifrost, and the fact that when they get to Halvar, before they give him the sword, he is standing guarding a bridge.
Right.
Like, maybe a little ham-fisted, but it helped me get there, because I wasn't exactly sure. Especially because it was like, he's the god of battle, so like that made me think more of Thor, but Toralf is clearly Thor, so like, it confused me a little bit, but that's why I would lean more towards the Heimdall aspect of things, but I would love people's thoughts. If you're like, no, Joe, it's blatantly this, and I'm just not aware of it, as always, let me know. I'd love to know.
Well, and my argument to that was, okay, well, maybe it's a combination of things. Like,
Sure.
maybe it's magic trying to differentiate from Norse mythology a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's Marvel didn't go the distance
Sure.
with that particular character,
Sure.
the way the original mythology did,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variations that you could, take a character when you're working off of something like Norse mythology. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and because Sarulf is clearly like the one-to-one comparison with Fenrir, but if you wanted to say that Halvar is a combination of Thor and Heimdall, makes perfect sense. That's fine too, right? Whatever it is, and that makes perfect sense, that you can like take inspiration but also add your own.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they can just make everything exactly
Sure.
adherent to what the actual Norse mythology was, and make all the character names the same and everything, because then there's nothing proprietary about it. You're not it's not your products, it's just it's just shit that already existed.
I wanted to talk about a moment that made me smile and laugh was with Varaggoth, because usually in a fight, right, especially one that seems as desperate as this one did, it's probably not a moment where you're thinking comedy is going to be present. Although again, there's the moment of, what, you wanted more, right? Like that. Right. I get it. I get that it can totally be inserted in there, but if it wasn't there, you wouldn't be like, why wasn't there comedy in this story? Like,
right.
No, I get it. But the funniest moment in the world to me in this story was...
But with that line, somebody would have said that line in the movie theater watching the movie if it wasn't in the movie.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, they obviously had the setup, the Doctor Strange setup of, is that everybody?
Right.
So, I mean without that as well. Without the setup and without the punchline. Like, It still would have been great. It would have been just as good of a movie. But that joke is very funny. And so it's good. In this story, I really appreciated Kaya and Tyvar and Kaya and Cosima facing off against Varaggoth. And Varaggoth is like, looks at Kaya and he's like, I know that sword on your back, I know why you're here, and you're never going to trap me in that realm again. And then just Kaya throws an axe in his head. So good. It's like, shut the hell up. And I get that that's, at this point, even a little cliched, because the cliche used to be that the villain monologues, and now the cliche is a little bit of both. You can have the villain monologuing, but you can also have the person, like, the villain stands there and is about to monologue and then gets smacked to the ground. And it's like, I didn't even get to say anything. Yeah, just get the hell on with it. But that was so funny. And then to have Kaya be a strong woman and stand up and be like, look, I get it. You're a big, scary boogeyman to these people because they've been telling stories about you for years.
I'm not from here, so I don't give a damn.
Yeah, exactly. But here, hold this axe with your forehead. Like, so funny. That was really, really good. And I really appreciated that moment. Yeah. Really good.
What comparison did you talk to me about, like, in video games or whatever?
Oh, it was oh god, I don't remember the name of the game, but it was a Sonic game. Shoutouts to Game Grumps and Shuffle Master in Aaron Egoraptor. But they played through a Sonic game, and one of the villains in the game was like doing that thing where when they're fighting, he's like, I am ultimate power, and then like if you hit him while he's talking, that dialogue ends, and you hear like the ooh ah. So it It was like, I can never be, ooh, ah, ee, ah, just hilarious. So funny. And I'm here for all that. Super funny. And then kind of to counter that, you have a slightly corny moment. And by slightly, I mean probably very corny. But I'll ask, I think I did this a few weeks ago or whatever, but previously in this series from here on Kaldheim. I don't know why. I'm like thinking like Heimdall, Kaldheim. It got mixed up in my head, so I couldn't think of the word. But for these Kaldheim stories, was it too corny? This is my question to you and to all of you. The moment at the end when Tyvar looks at Kaya and he's like, well, I'm probably going to go planeswalk now. Like, not like right now, but like I'm going to check out these other realms you were talking about. And Kaya's like, but I thought you said you were going to stay here. And he's like, yeah, well, I was a little too quick to judge. I was all on your back for like, you're going to leave and you're going to run away. Well, you stayed, and so I respect you now. So I'm going to do that thing that I said I wasn't going to do because I didn't respect you, but now I do respect you, so I'm going to do the thing.
Yeah.
Like, that seemed very much like, ugh, yeah. Okay. I get it. I guess, but also, wow. Like, it just felt like a lot in that moment of just like, oh.
It's kind of stupid.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Was it corny in a good way, or was it corny?
I don't know if it was corny so much as like...
Tropey?
Yeah, or like almost nonsensical.
Sure. Okay. And then...
Like thrown in there just for the sake of like, remember he's a planeswalker, and so now we need to make him switch planes, even though he said he's not about that.
Right, because maybe we want to see Tyvar before we come back to Kaldheim.
Right.
Sure.
Or we want to, I don't know, we want to develop his character in a way where he's learned all these things, he's wise now because he's traveled to all these different planes, before we see him again or whatever.
I'll say one last thing, because I was going to talk about the main thing at the end, and I still will, but one last thing before I get to that. What did people think of Nico in this one? Because I felt like towards the end, right, when we saw Nico in the side stories, the first two side stories, Nico was very sure of themselves.
Yeah.
And yet at the end, it seemed very childlike in the way that Nico spoke to Kaya. Of like, oh, these other realms. Is one of those named Theros? And it's like, it is. What are you talking about? Like,
because Kaya said to... What the hell am I trying to say? Okay, because I think Nico was trying to find out from Kaya if Kaya was actually referencing planeswalking or not.
Okay.
So they were like, well, that thing that you're talking about, so is one of them maybe Theros? Do you know what I'm talking about? Because if you don't, never mind. Like something like that.
That's fair. It just seemed like it was Nico like not understanding planeswalking at all and being like, oh, planes, is Theros one of them? And like being like really like innocent and childlike in asking, and then Kaya being like, oh, there's another one. We should talk. Like again, another example of Kaya, like she did with Tyvar, like, all right, kid, let me explain the ropes to you here. Which, it seemed odd to me. If that's the route they want to go, that's fine. I don't think it's bad. It just was odd to me that was the choice.
I don't know. I feel completely differently.
Okay.
I feel completely differently.
Good.
I feel like it was to me, it was very clearly a way for Nico to be like, do you know what I'm talking about? Are we talking about the same thing or a different thing?
It could have been Nico being cagey, and that's perfectly fair. That's perfectly fair. And so again, let me know. What do you think? Do you think it was like weird characterization, or do you think it was caginess and I misread it? And that's obviously definitely a thing that could happen.
And I'll give you that it would be difficult to convey that.
Sure.
Necessarily.
Sure.
In solely a written word form.
Sure.
Because the dialogue, obviously, what Nico's saying is going to be different from what Nico is meaning.
Yeah. And
So,
well,
like,
you could
what you're gonna read is gonna be different from what Nico means.
sure, but you can
know?
explain that away with descriptions of mannerisms, or if you want to get into Nico's
Yeah.
head and hesitantly or whatever, like whatever it is.
Yeah,
that
but I
you
mean,
could.
it's clear that they didn't want to like go the direction of let's change the perspective of this again.
Sure.
Now,
No, absolutely. Yeah. And so then we have the last thing that we have to talk about. Because I feel annoyed, so I'll come out, up front and say that. I feel annoyed. And if I'm wrong, and the side story next week explains this away, then great, it explains it away. But I'm going to say I highly doubt it, but we'll see. The epilogue following this. I mentioned last week, we talked about the fact that I was curious how they were going to get in all of this stuff. And by the time right before they started the epilogue, I was like, okay, they've done everything but Kaya and Vorinclex. And they even brought up at the end, hey, there's that monster that you still have to find. And Kaya's like, yep, you're right. Okay. And then the epilogue starts. And I'm like, cool. Right. The epilogue is going to be Kaya and Vorinclex. Got it. Awesome. Ready. First of all, it starts with Essica, the god of the tree, right? We know the card. We've seen it. There was the art for it.
Right.
Really cool that Essica is being killed by Vorinclex. Awesome. Show that Vorinclex is the villain. Show that they have no consideration whatsoever. Show that they are super powerful. And it's confusing how Vorinclex was able to get to a place that no one has ever been able to get to before besides Essica. Great. Show that Vorinclex is in a place that is pure and untouched and needs to not be a place that can be corrupted.
Yeah.
Super important. Great to show that. And then Vorinclex takes a bottle from Essica, dips it into the well of the sap of the world tree, and then gets taken out through a portal that Essica knows is not an omen path through to another realm, but on Kaldheim, but is another realm entirely. She doesn't fully say that, but she knows it's not an omen path to another realm on Kaldheim. And as Vorinclex leaves, something on the other side says, welcome back, Vorinclex. We step ever closer to perfection. Now, everybody knows it's a Phyrexian. We get it. Great. Important and interesting to see where that goes and why they need Sap of the World Tree and what they're going to do with it. I found it interesting that Essica mentioned specifically that the sap could be corrupted and what type of seed would they leave there. That's a problem.
Yeah.
If the sap of the world tree, if the base of the world tree gets corrupted, that's all of the planes going down. So that's a big deal. All the realms going down, right. I should say. So that's a big deal.
Not other planes.
No. That's why I specified realms, not planes. Sorry. So, good. Awesome. Really good parts of this epilogue. I liked it. And it's interesting because it didn't specify that Vorinclex left any seed or corruption or whatever, right. But we also know that with Phyrexians comes Phyrexian oil, and that corrupts, and so it's definitely possible that that's a thing, but it's also possible, whether they want to do it that way or they don't, they have outs either way, to be able to say that there was corruption or there wasn't. My problem is, let's talk about story spotlights for a minute. Just for a minute. Story spotlights came out following Theros.
Yeah. Because
in Theros, or Theros block, Elspeth dies. And this is original Theros. Theros, Born of the Gods, Journey into Nyx. Not Theros Beyond Death. Elspeth dies. And you don't know that based on the cards. You don't.
Right.
So what they decided to do following Theros was to make story spotlight cards. To show, hey, guess what? Here are the big story moments that need to be shown, told, you need to understand. And at first they did them numerically. Story spotlights 1 through 5. And it was almost always 5 per at first. 5%. And it was in order of when they happened in the stories. Great. Awesome. Then they did away with the numbering. Okay. Not offensive totally, I get it, where they just want story spotlights. These are the moments that you should be paying attention to. And to be honest, like with War of the Spark, it was kind of obvious what, like,
the order.
Yeah, that, like, you know, Gideon sacrificing himself to save Liliana happens before he's reunited with his friends in the afterlife. Clearly.
Yeah.
Right? But those are story spotlights. They've kept up story spotlights even when they didn't really have stories.
Right. Or
they did and they were very disconnected and weren't really story spotlightable.
Right. Or they didn't, yeah, they weren't story spotlightable. Like, they didn't have anything to say about these moments. Mm-hmm. They weren't real moments.
Right. But these, in this set, were pretty good. Except for now, one. Somebody explain to me Kaya's Onslaught. Somebody. Help me out here. Because the art, first of all, the card in our preview stream won us many a game. The card's great. Yeah. +1/+1 and double strike until end of turn. Instant speed, 2 mana or whatever, 1 mana.
What is it, an uncommon?
I don't remember. I thought it was a common, but maybe it's an uncommon. It's definitely not a rare or a mythic, but it's either common or uncommon. I think
it's uncommon, but regardless,
Doesn't matter.
That's a card that is going to be sought after
when
limited. You're playing.
In limited. Probably not in constructed, but still. Maybe.
Still. You know.
But it's a story.
You might want to get it right.
Right. It's a story spotlight card. Now, for people who are unfamiliar, feel free to look it up, first of all, to see what it looks like. But it's literally a picture of Kaya on Vorinclex's back with her daggers over its head. And the flavor text on the bottom, and it literally says it's a story spotlight card.
And you're sure it's Vorinclex?
100%.
Okay.
And on the bottom it says, your trail ends here.
Okay.
What other trail? Who else would it be? Your trail of corruption, your trail through Kaldheim, it ends here. This is the job that I was given, the task that I was given. My job is now done. Your trail ends now. Okay, that's sweet. I was really looking forward to seeing that. Did we see it in this set of Kaldheim stories? Because I didn't. Did I miss one? I don't think so. I have numbers 1 through 5 reviewed right here in this notebook. So, and this was definitely number 5. It said so in the story. So, like I said, if the side story released tomorrow, the day after this video comes out, talks about that, then I rescind everything I've just talked about. But if not, what the hell, Wizards?
Yeah.
What? Again, kind of a big story point. A lot of people are like, why is Vorinclex back? What's going on with the Phyrexians? Well, Kaya's Onslaught kind of makes it seem like Kaya's kicking Vorinclex's ass.
Yep.
It's called her Onslaught. So she gets +1/+1 and double strike, right? Like, it's, you know, I don't understand. How and why is it a story spotlight if it didn't happen in the story?
Right.
It's supposed to be a story spotlight. And
or why is the picture of Vorinclex if who she's onslaughting is not Vorinclex?
Could be Varaggoth. I mean, obviously, the art is definitely not a Varaggoth. No question it's not Varaggoth. But it could have been. If you wanted that to be your story spotlight, have it be Varaggoth. Who cares? That's great. It would have worked perfectly with the story. It's not technically her daggers, it's the axes, but that's nitpicky as hell at that point. But her being on the back of Vorinclex is not nitpicky. That never happened. Vorinclex is gone now, and Kaya never interacted with Vorinclex once.
Right.
Nobody but Essica did, except for technically Tybalt, but we don't really know that. Like, we do, but we don't. Because we didn't see it. We just heard that Tybalt was corrupted by a horrible beast. So, we do, but we don't know. But then why is there a story spotlight with Kaya on Vorinclex? I'm like angry.
Yeah,
I'm annoyed. I'm confused.
When you pointed that out, I was like, yeah, so like there's still another story, but no, it's not supposed to be one of these stories.
Nope.
It's supposed to be a side story.
That's why I said last week that it felt like this week it was going to be very difficult to stop the Doomscars, stop Varaggoth, and have Kaya find and beat Vorinclex. And even if it was just, she finds it, she tries to fight it, she gets maybe a little bit of corruption, and then it runs away. Okay, that would still be something to get us, give us that little morsel and then tug it away. I get it. You've got more sets to come out. You need these villains to last for a long time, right? To have them be your next big bad if that's what you want to do, fine. But don't lie to our faces.
Yeah.
That frustrates the crap out of me.
Or change the story before it's written so much that the cards that you make no longer coincide with the story you put out.
Yeah, because that was supposed to be fixed when you got rid of the ebooks, which were written so far in advance of the set being released that you needed to have it be so disconnected and feel so disconnected, despite the fact that people were paying for them.
Right.
But that it felt so disconnected because you needed to have them written so far in advance so that you could get them proofread and reread and checked for canon and make sure that everything was written appropriately for that. This bothered me a lot. Like I said, I would love to be proven wrong as of tomorrow. Truly, I would love it because I don't want to be upset. These stories otherwise were really good. Really good overall. And I think we can do more of a sunset on this set of stories next week, if and when there is a final story, and or we can do the Planeswalkers guide. We'll figure it out. But like I said, tune in next week for another JaAR. I've mentioned it all, right? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you have an explanation? Do you have a thought? Again, if you're watching this after Friday and that story has come out, that it is Kaya and Vorinclex, then like I said, I rescind it. You're more than welcome to say it in the comments anyway, but if I'm wrong, I rescind it, of course. But if I'm not...
And hopefully you are.
Yeah, I hope so. But if not, I have a question. What the hell? So, yeah. I would love to hear any and all thoughts anybody has in the comments down below. Because it frustrates me. If that is the last thing, I am able enough to look back and be like, you know what? The first 4 side stories that we've seen already and read were pretty damn good. The 5 main stories for Kaldheim were pretty damn good. Right? There were none where we were like, wow, these are bad. Right. Some of them were good, some of them were great, and nothing lower than good, I would say. Right? And they can't all be A+, that's not what we're asking for. But good as a bare minimum sounds awesome.
Right.
But why end your story with a lie? Why have that be the last thing that people think about?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cool, we saw Vorinclex. Wait, where's Kaya? Why isn't Kaya... What?
Wait, where'd he go?
Right.
What? He's gone?
Right.
How can he be gone?
Right.
Kaya's supposed to kill him.
Right.
Or do something
at least fight him. Right. Kaya's onslaught shows Kaya on his back. Your trail ends here. They should at least meet up face to face. That's even if she doesn't fight him, even if she meets up with him face to face and then he teleports away or goes away, I'd be okay with that too. They never interacted ever.
Right, or even if the art on the card was just her killing some random other thing.
Sure. Anyway, like I said, I'd love to hear people's thoughts in the comments below. Being able to separate one frustrating moment and talk about it, but not let it ruin the story overall, I think is one way that we can all collectively show off our...
#Vorthos Pride.
Because we're allowed to be frustrated with things while also acknowledging how good we have it now, especially compared to what we had before.
Yeah.
And not way before, but most recently before. Like that Amy was
that we kept on.
Or like this one over here, Forsaken. So thank you all.
Gives me the shivers.
It gives many people the shivers. Thank you all so very much for watching this episode. We hope that you enjoyed. Like we said, we will be back next week, no matter what, for something. Yes. JaAR or Vorthos related, Magic Story related. So we encourage you to join back up with us. Again, we really would appreciate it. So, for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I've been Joe.
And I'm Mimi.
Please don't forget, Sorry, I don't want you to leave. I don't want to leave you waving forever. It's gonna be, your arm's gonna get tired. Yeah. Please don't forget, we stream every Monday and Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. So if you are already subscribed, great. If you're not, please do so. And either way, we would love if you would ring that bell. You will get a push notification every time we go live so that you never miss a stream. Yes. Fridays, we are streaming video games. This Friday, we are continuing our playthrough of Marvel's Avengers.
Yeah.
Great game. Really a lot of fun. We've been enjoying it a lot. And every Monday, we are streaming MTG Arena. This past Monday, we did our first non-early access Kaldheim events. We did okay. We went like 4-3. So, you know, we don't put ourselves out there as experts of any kind, but it is an amazing environment. We love our community of folks who come and join us. So if you are among that community, thank you so much. If you would like to join in, there is no barrier of entry whatsoever. Show up, say hello in chat, or just lurk and watch, but we would love to hear from you as well. Amy is always checking out what you folks are saying, so we would love to see you.
We've recently had a lot of people who say, oh, well, you know, I haven't played Magic in a while, but I just kind of want to come and check up. That's totally fine.
Absolutely.
You know, you want to stop by and just see what Arena is looking like, and you're kind of wondering about the new mechanics. Totally fine.
Yeah.
And you want to just come into chat and talk to me about non-Magic related things, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
So.
I was just going to say, shout outs to Erica, because Amy and Erica always inevitably talk about food, and I'm 100% here for it, but I'm sitting over here being like, oh my god, I'm losing this game, and Amy's like, oh my god, Erica, that sounds so good. So like, anything that you want to talk about within reason, of course.
Yes.
We would love to have you, no matter whether you want to talk Magic and talk specifics, or whether you want to just chill out and hang out with cool people. So. We really do appreciate it. So now Amy can wave at you all. As I say, as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.